Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
For some opening shot thoughts on the current gerrymandering controversy, I turn to the parting words of the nation's first president and perhaps most lauded founding father, George Washington, who warned about the perils of political parties. In short, he didn't believe in them. Quote, the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. Not mincing words, one can imagine Washington's speech being particularly germane to the issue of gerrymandering or the drawing of political maps to benefit one party and punish another. As you might have heard by now, Democrats in Texas have fled the state to shut down a special legislative session there where Republicans, at the behest of President Trump, are attempting an unusual move to redraw maps in the middle of the decade to help Republicans gain 5 seats in Congress. Now, the Democrats have fled to a state that many have called the poster child for gerrymandering on the other side, where Democrats have drawn maps that have helped give them a 14-3 advantage in Congress and a supermajority in the General Assembly. And the Texas standoff is leading to an arms race of sorts where blue states are vowing to retaliate. The loser is the American voter, who will continue to see their power to elect a representative of their choice erode. Democracy loses too, as partisan districts will mean more political extremes in Congress, more fighting, more partisanship, and a weaker nation. Now, Texas Democrat Al Green said that this is an inflection point. Indeed, it is. Good government groups for years have attempted to change the system in Illinois and other states so that an independent commission draws the maps based on things like population, demographics, and continuity. In most states, they are drawn with none of those things in mind, only politics. But these bipartisan groups haven't gained traction in Illinois because the issue maybe is too opaque for the public to understand. But this moment requires Republican and Democratic voters to look in the mirror. Any attempt to paint one side as the bad guy and the other as the good guy on this issue is not accurate. It doesn't work. Voters need to hold their own party leaders to account to spur a national movement to fix these egregious maps that have disenfranchised so many voters. So if you're a partisan who takes glee at the misfortune of the other side, who is more loyal to party than to principle, George Washington believes that you are the problem. And it's time to remember the words of America's other great president, Abraham Lincoln. A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Texas lawmakers escape gerrymandering battle to take refuge in heavily gerrymandered Illinois and face new threats of violence. A bipartisan Illinois group aims once again to fix the politically drawn maps here to make them more independent.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Welcome to Paris on Politics. The issue of hyper-partisan gerrymandering is now front and center. Texas Democrats have spent 3 full days in Illinois hiding out and preventing their state's legislature from voting on a heavily partisan remap, and it's pushed by their governor, Greg Abbott, and President Trump. Those Democrats say they're undeterred despite new worries about safety, including a bomb threat at their hotel this morning. St. Charles police responded to a bomb threat at 7:15 a.m. and evacuated 400 people. Police and Kane County Sheriff's bomb squad cased the building and say they did not find any devices. A delegation of about 30 Democratic Texas lawmakers are here to avoid voting on a controversial redistricting bill in that state, which would give Republicans potentially 5 more congressional seats by drawing favorable maps. One of those members, State Rep Ann Johnson, says they've received threats every day they've been here.
On the first day, we had our leadership positions threatened. The second day, we then had financial pressure threatened against us personally. And today we had our lives threatened. I think it shows how desperate Republicans are to try to get this done, get us back in Austin and try to get this thing passed to steal 5 seats for Trump. It has just made me feel more emboldened about the fact we obviously must be doing the right thing.
Johnson notes that Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said, quote, he would hunt them down to bring them back to the Capitol to vote. She says it's leading to some of the threats. Governor Pritzker says he's asked the Illinois State Police to get involved. He weighed in on the situation while visiting the state fair in Springfield today, saying that he believes a YouTube podcaster and conspiracy theorist has been fanning the flame.
Who took a video of where they're staying, posted it, put a map up to point out exactly what hotel they're at. That happened before the bomb threat was issued.
Pritzker used incendiary language of his own to respond to the public safety threat.
They're doing an investigation. They're going to seek out, hunt down, and find the perpetrators.
And now we're joined by Lena DeFloria's political anchor at our sister station, Fox 26 in Houston. She's been up here in Chicago all week following the delegation's moves. You've been in contact with them. What is their reaction tonight after what had happened today?
So I talked to a lot of them, and they say this is not going to deter them, that they are going to hold fast, right? They want to block this redistricting map before the midterm elections next year. So we have a due date of the end of the year to get that map in for the primaries in March, and they say they're willing to wait it out. But they wouldn't specifically say, what does that mean? Does that mean they're willing to wait out the special session, or they're willing to wait out the year to keep the current map on the table?
That would be very expensive because the law there says they're fined $500 a day that they miss. So you're saying they might actually stay away for 6 months until December to just run out the clock?
Well, they've done it before in 2021. They broke quorum, and they did that for 38 days. But there was no fine at that point. So if they were to wait through December, then you're talking about a fine of $65,000 per lawmaker, and there are limits on where that money can come from. In fact, Attorney General Paxton actually just filed looking for an investigation into a super PAC by Beto O'Rourke, who's picking up the tab for some of the expenses and some of the fines.
What are those limits?
So the limits have to be they can't be soliciting the money, and then they can't be political contributions or campaign dollars that they're using to finance the breaking quorum.
I remember going to the press conference on Sunday, and they were basically saying, hey, you know, go to a GoFundMe or something like that. I wonder if that would count as soliciting. I want to play a shot from an Illinois Republican senator named John Curran, who is very critical of Democrats being here in Illinois. Basically saying that Illinois, on the other side, is a poster child for redistricting. Take a look.
If Texas lawmakers are trying to talk fairness in the partisan process, Illinois is the last place they should be looking to or coming to.
And we've talked about this here, that Illinois maps were drawn by the Democratic Party. They give Democrats a 14-3 advantage in Congress. They've helped give them vast supermajorities in the General Assembly. Do Texas Democrats acknowledge, perhaps, that this is not a state known for fairness in its districting? Well,
they say that, you know, why Chicago, right? They say because they know they have allies here, and they know that it's a typically blue state. I mean, remember that you hosted the DNC last year, and Chicago has hosted more Democratic national conventions than any other city. So it's not a big surprise that they would come here. But there's actually a movement by a California representative, Kevin Keeley, who wants to stop redistricting across the country, including in his own state. But the interesting thing there is that do you really have that power? Because every state is in charge of its own redistricting, and they all do it differently. Not only that, you are required by federal law after the census to redraw your maps to account for population changes.
And we're going to talk to someone who's leading another independent movement here in Illinois to do that after the census. But that's what makes this strange, is that it's happening mid-decade. This happens in every state after the census, but it is legal. It's not violating any law to do this midstream.
It's legal. There's totally valid reasons why you would do that, whether it be legislative or there be some sort of shift, but it's not common. It does happen, but it's just not something that they normally do. They do it after the census because right now there's no verified population change because there hasn't been a census this year.
Right. And we're looking at the Texas map there. It shows the counties, but then the colors show the districts there. And you've heard Governor Abbott saying that he's going to vacate their jobs. He's going to send authorities to arrest them. Maybe the FBI gets involved. Are those empty threats at this point, or has there been any movement on that?
Who's to say? I mean, there's a lot of talk by everyone, a lot of accusations and finger pointing. So can they do that? Can they pull them out of their jobs? There is a law on the Texas books that say if you abandon your office, you leave your constituents with no representation, that yeah, they can officially pull you from that seat. But the question is this abandonment? Because the Texas Constitution does allow for breaking quorum. So legally, you're allowed to do that. It's just, you know, where is the line of abandonment? Who decides? Well, the Texas governor has taken that to the Texas State Supreme Court, and that's 9 justices who are all Republican as well.
And I was just going to say, it sounds like it's going to be a judge or judges that have to decide this. Will they expedite a hearing on this kind of thing?
Hard to say. You know, getting things through courts takes a while. However, the governor did file an emergency motion, and those usually do get expedited a little bit quicker. But you always run into the issue that what if lawmakers are back at the Capitol before this actually gets decided on? All
right, a lot to wade through, Lena DeFlorius. Hope you've enjoyed your time up here in Chicago and the western suburbs where they've been camping out. We appreciate it. Beautiful. And back after this with a movement to take the politics out of map making here in Illinois.